So I'm making this video about Etsy and how it's forcing sellers to verify their bank accounts through Plaid. I don't know how that business name is actually called or pronounced, but I'm going to call them Plaid because they're affecting how sellers get paid or even if they get paid. So first up, I'm going to read this article that was written earlier this year by Ina Steiner. Forgive me if I pronounced that name wrong. And it's titled, Etsy said it's required to force sellers to verify their bank accounts. Etsy caused a stir Thursday morning when it sent an email to sellers requiring them to verify their bank account information. The reason it gave was in order for the company to comply with anti-money laundering regulations. Again, Etsy's doing this to comply with anti-money laundering regulations, supposedly, while verifying bank account information causes concern among some sellers who say that they've had trouble in the past. The real anxiety among sellers was over how Etsy is requiring them to verify the information. Sellers must use a third-party service called Plaid, which asks sellers to enter not only their banking information, but their bank account passwords. So let's pause right here. So this company Plaid, in order to verify your bank account with Etsy, you actually have to enter your bank account number, the routing number, and there is an option to actually log on to your bank through Plaid. So they'll also have your password to your bank account. So they'll know what banking institution you're with and your password to said bank account. And we're going to get into that later. So after running a test last month, Etsy added information to its help page that showed an option that would be an alternative to having to provide their bank account passwords to Plaid, called the manual option. But it results in a 5-day hold on seller funds. That leaves sellers having to choose between risking security or facing payment holds. You can find details on the Auction Bites blog, sellers in the US on Thursday with the subject line, verify your bank account to keep getting paid. Follows, and it shows you the steps going through the Etsy website to update your information and then verify your bank with Plaid. Now, let's talk about that second option, which is the manual option. The manual option is basically, as the article stated, yes, you do get to avoid giving Plaid your password, but you still have to give them your bank account and your routing number. So it's still very troubling for sellers like me who don't trust Plaid, and we're going to get into why a little bit later on. So here's a second article by the same author, Ina Steiner, and this is on ecommercebites.com. So the first article was written in August. This is a follow-up written in September. Sellers who had just suffered waves of anxiety over a new verification requirement got a shock today when Etsy notified them their accounts were not verified and discovered they were unable to activate a button to re-verify their accounts, leaving their funds in limbo. So not a good look on Etsy. A seller wrote to e-commerce bites this evening, after we verified our bank accounts weeks ago with Plaid, after getting deposits for weeks, tons of us just got notice our bank account is not authorized. The redo button is not working. Etsy is holding our money. Please help. The seller linked a thread on the Etsy discussion boards titled, Plaid told Etsy unable to verify my bank account. Quote, I did the whole Plaid nonsense about a week ago and linked my bank directly to Etsy, kicking and screaming, mind you, and just got an email telling me that Plaid was unable to verify the bank info and to log in and fix it. I log in to fix it, and the box won't let me open it. Won't let me open it to re-enter bank details to start the process over. You click and it never opens the whatever to let me re-enter. I'm going to lose my mind if this prevents me from getting my weekly deposits when we've done nothing wrong and there's no issue with my bank account. Anyone experiencing this, I'm so annoyed. Etsy posted an announcement on the technical issues board to say the company was investigating the issue. Investigating. We couldn't verify your bank account information. Email sent to verified sellers. Here's the email. Hey all, there's a team looking into what caused some sellers who have already verified their bank accounts to receive an email saying they were not verified. Once I got an update from the team, I'll add it to this thread. Thanks. Sellers had been upset about the new requirement last month because the vendors Etsy selected to aid in the verification process, i.e. Plaid, required sellers to enter the password of their bank account, which many felt was an unsafe practice. And why do they feel that it's an unsafe practice? Why would Etsy sellers be uncomfortable with providing a third-party vendor, i.e. Plaid, with their bank account passwords? Let's look into why. So earlier this year, this happened. So this is an article from Courthouse News Service, and this is actually up to date. Judge approves settlement ordering Plaid, the very same Plaid, Etsy's Plaid, to pay $58 million for selling consumer data. So this was written in July by Natalie Hansen. So Plaid just got caught with the hand in the cookie jar earlier this year. Excuse me, they actually got caught some time ago, but now they're forced to pay $58 million for the nonsense that they did last year, I think it was. So let's go on and look at this. So Oakland, California, a federal court judge on Wednesday approved banking app Plaid's $58 million privacy class action settlement after consumers claimed the company had harvested and sold their financial data without consent. And this is the third-party agency that Etsy thought would be great to verify sellers' bank account information. Right after they just got sued and forced to pay $58 million for basically harvesting. It's called harvesting, but I like the word stealing. But sure, let's go with harvesting. And then sold their financial data. Now, who did they sell their financial data to? Who knows? What's going to come of that data? Who knows? But Etsy is forcing sellers to then give their financial data to a company who's clearly has some trust issues. Okay, so U.S. Magistrate Judge Donna Ryu's, which is an awesome last name if you're a gamer like me, Donna Ryu's order found that 11 plaintiffs from 5 lawsuits, led by James Codall, won payment for all implicated customers whose data was sold by the tech startup Plaid, using their banking information credentials, their banking login credentials, the very same credentials that Etsy's asking sellers to give to this company. I wonder why people have an issue with this. Plaid provides bank linking and verification services for fintech apps that consumers use to send and receive money from financial accounts, such as Venmo, Coinbase, Cash App, and Stripe. Codall's original complaint said when he signed up for a Venmo account in 2019, he did not know he was sharing his banking credentials with Plaid. He said the company hid the fact that it was accessing his sensitive financial information by prompting him to log in to his bank to set up a Venmo account. The case was combined with 4 other lawsuits brought in May, June, and July of 2020. Other plaintiffs said Plaid designed login screens in its interface to look like screens used by individual financial institutions, but failed to disclose to users that they were not interfacing with their bank. All affected customers will be paid about $13.50 each. Under this order, Plaid will also implement several business practice changes, such as deleting transactions data from users that did not connect an account for transactions, or those for whom Plaid is aware that it no longer has valid means that can be used to authenticate with the financial institution. Plaid will also minimize data it collects and stores going forward. The company must make new disclosures during every account creation process and with its privacy policy referencing a portal where users can manage the connections between apps and their financial accounts using Plaid. The judge also ruled that the considerable cost for multiple attorneys on this lawsuit required paying a fee of $11 million. In November, the federal court preliminary approved the settlement. Out of the approximately 98 million eligible class members, 5 submitted timely objections. Some asked for more reasonable settlement amount paid per person, which the judge said it was illegitimate since no class members incurred any out-of-pocket expenses due to Plaid's practices. Value's preliminary ruling advanced claims, including intrusion upon seclusion. Wow, that sentence right there. Unjust enrichment and violation of California's anti-phishing law, which makes it illegal to misrepresent oneself in order to induce someone to hand over their sensitive financial information. She threw out a claim Plaid violated Stored Communications Act, which prohibits unauthorized access to electronic communications considered to be in electronic storage. The complications of all of this. A lot of technobabble. Value dismissed without prejudice plaintiffs' claims that they suffered damage or lost money or property as a result of Plaid's actions, which doomed their claims for fraud under California's Unfair Competition Law and Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. A spokesperson for Plaid said the company denies ever having sold or harvested data. While we disagree and have denied all allegations, we're looking forward to putting the lawsuit behind us, they said in an email statement. Okay, you just lost $58 million, but you're just saying you didn't do anything wrong and you're just going to put it behind. Okay. Laura, I'm going to butcher this name. I apologize in advance. Laura Sealed of Hara Kennedy LLP, representing the plaintiffs, said, "We are thrilled to have achieved such great result on behalf of the class, including the robust injunctive relief that puts a stop to the privacy violations we uncovered during our investigation." Fields added, "I think it's going to be a great deterrent to other institutions that might try to do similar things." The class action lawsuit hit at the same time Plaid was planning a $3.5 billion acquisition by Visa, which I think was also blocked for other reasons and by other outside parties. The Department of Justice investigated the deal in 2020 into whether the merger possesses a threat to competition in the market for online debit services. The two companies subsequently abandoned the deal last year. So yeah, I think the Department of Justice was looking into that, and for whatever reason, I don't know which pieces played a factor in that deal falling through, whether it was the DOJ or Plaid getting sued for $58 million or the multiple class actions that were going on. A lot of variables there, but that deal fell through. Visa was supposed to acquire Plaid, and that didn't happen. So here we are with the background of this company, which is not a very pleasant one, who allegedly harvested people's financial data and allegedly sold that data. But now Etsy is asking sellers to hand over very similar data, including passwords, to this third-party company with a very sketchy past. And sellers are supposed to be okay with this. Now, here's my issue, which there are multiple, including this third-party company, but it's another aspect of this is the timing. I take very, I'm affronted by the timing of all of this, because I just got an email. I've received multiple emails from Etsy saying that I too, I'm an Etsy seller and I have to verify my bank account through Plaid. And Etsy's excuse for all of this is due to anti-money laundering reasons. but they had other options outside of Plaid, especially seeing what Plaid just did, or what the settlement Plaid has to pay. So it's very sketchy why Etsy would continue with this company and not seek another option, or at least make another option available, especially for sellers who have already been selling on Etsy for years now. Why is this the only go-to? It seems lazy and it seems insensitive, but hey, Etsy's about that money, right? So what I mentioned was the timing of all of this. The email I just received says I have less than 7 days to verify my bank account through Plaid. They've sent emails in the past, you have 30 days, so on and so forth. So that means Etsy is putting the deadline in October. Now, as an Etsy seller, it's mainly a crafts website where people who make things sell those things online. Now, for the deadline to be in October, knowing that a lot of sellers have a lot of butterflies in their stomach about this, they're probably going to wait to the last minute. And for that to be in October, which is the exact time of year to prepare for presents in December. So if buyers like to wait till about October, November timeframe to place those orders with craft makers on Etsy for those items to be shipped in December. So the timing of all of this is very sketchy to me, and it really feels like FOMO. Even if Etsy didn't do it on purpose and it's just by happenstance, it still feels very icky because, again, October and November are the main money months for crafts persons, because then we can ship our items in late November, December to make it for the holidays. So this is very, very sketch for the deadline to just happen to be in October versus, January or February, where people can actually do some research and not have that what's called FOMO, fear of missing out. Because let's look at what Etsy's doing. So here's the payment settings screen, and it says here I have 6 days to verify my account. As part of our work to keep our community safe, reduce fraud, and meet evolving legal requirements, we need to verify your bank account or you'll no longer be able to receive funds from sales. Now let's look at that verbiage. Now, as we just read in those articles, words mean a lot. Words mean things. And the verbiage here from Etsy, you'll no longer be able to receive funds from sales. Now, what does that mean? Will I be able to still make sales? So I'll still be selling things. I just won't be able to receive the funds from those things. So my shop isn't being shut down. So buyers can still purchase from me. I just am blocked from getting my money from those sales. So does that also mean I have to send out those items being purchased from me? I know some sellers have automated systems where they may have some downloadable content, and when someone makes a sale, it's just emailed out to them. So the buyers are still getting their items so that the seller's feedback standing doesn't go down, or they don't receive complaints against them, but the sellers just aren't receiving their money. So where does that money go? Does it go into holding until they verify their account and then that money can be sent to them? How long does it remain in that holding? Etsy doesn't really give a lot of information on that, and I don't think it's fair for sellers to have to dig deep to find out that information. But I find that verbiage very, very interesting. You'll just no longer be able to receive funds from sales versus your shop will be temporarily shut down. And I actually reached out to an Etsy representative via chat and had this long discussion from that Etsy representative, and they basically were very vague in their verbiage. They just apologize a lot. I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry, da 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 da. They don't really give a lot of information. And when I asked why is Etsy doing this versus some other third-party system, when this company, Plaid, was just forced to pay $58 million in a settlement, all they said, the representative via chat said, you have to contact Plaid. And then I asked the representative, I, the seller, have a relationship with you, Etsy. My relationship is with Etsy. Why would I ask Plaid, which is a third-party company, why Etsy's doing what it's doing? And they repeated, just contact Plaid. So it's very odd. It's very off-putting that Etsy refuses to even provide sellers with an answer. It's very unfortunate because Etsy was the alternative to eBay, which has gone very corporate, and it looks like Etsy's falling right in that footpath of being very corporate, not very warm, not very user friendly or seller friendly as it was first seen or portrayed itself early in the early years. It's grown very corporate, very cold, and that's very sad to see. I understand that there are some practices that they're just built in, and like they said, evolving legal requirements. But there are other ways to do this, especially for sellers who have been with Etsy from the beginning or been with Etsy for many years, and to give them no alternative but to go through this third-party company, which has a very, very sketchy past. Literally this year, a few months ago, this settlement came down, and now Etsy's requiring us to give that information to Plaid. I believe the complaint was that Plaid was harvesting that information without revealing that it was harvesting that information, and now Etsy is just kind of eliminating that 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 opacity. So now it's transparent. Now Plaid's not, secretly harvesting that information. You're just going to give it to them. Etsy sellers are just going to give that information to them and then trust a company that has already proven that it can't really be trusted or hasn't earned that trust back. Just trust Plaid to not sell that data. That's very odd to me. So this is what the email tells you to do. It says go here and you have to connect your bank via Plaid, and then this will show up. Now, this is the part I also want to bring people's attention to because there are two options. Either you could give them your bank account and routing number and the password, or you could do the manual option, which puts your funds on hold for several days. In that manual option, you still have to give Plaid your bank account and routing number, which is still very troubling. So what I want to draw other sellers' attention to is this part down here. With Plaid's secure platform, you can instantly connect your bank account or opt for the manual verification. Plaid commits to never sharing your data without your permission. Why would anybody ever give them that permission? And what secret little tick marks or boxes do you have to check or uncheck to not give them that permission? That you'll have to read for yourself, and we'll get into that maybe a little bit later, but not in depth. By clicking next, you agree to Plaid's end user privacy policy. Now here's the thing. Just with Apple and Samsung, nobody reads these privacy policies. So let's go ahead and click on that. And this comes up. So in February of this year, this is the effective date, which is right around the time during that lawsuit, and the settlement came down, I think, in June or July. Here's Plaid's. This is Plaid's privacy policy. This end user privacy policy is meant to help you, the end user, understand how we at Plaid collect, use, and share end user information to operate, improve, develop, and help protect services, and help protect our services, and as otherwise outlined in this policy. Please take some time to read this policy carefully. I highly, highly recommend people read this because it's not an easy read, but it has some hidden things in it. And I think people should be paying attention to that. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a lawyer. Never been to law school. But I'm open to hearing what any persons who are familiar with how to read these privacy policies have to say on this. Now, it's not an easy read because of that first sentence in this paragraph right here. This policy does not apply to Plaid identity verification and monitoring services, which our business customers use to facilitate identity verification, fraud detection, and watch list screening. So that's exactly why Etsy's using Plaid is for identity verification and for fraud detection. But then the first sentence in this paragraph says this policy does not apply. So that's very confusing. It's the end user privacy policy, but it's saying it doesn't apply for when it's being used for fraud detection. I don't know. Maybe I'm just reading this weird. Somebody help me out with that. Plaid is a processor or service provider as it relates to those services, and our customer control the purposes and means by which end user information is processed. For information regarding how Plaid and its affiliate process end user information in connection with those services, see our affiliates. Now again, see our affiliates end user privacy statement. So what are they telling me to do now? I was just sent from Etsy to read Plaid's end user privacy policy, but now Plaid is saying for that information, I need to read Etsy's end user privacy statement. Is that what that's telling me? Am I being flip-flopped? Because when I was chatting with Etsy, an Etsy representative, I was told to contact Plaid as to why Etsy's doing what it's doing. But now Plaid is telling me to contact Etsy. See these games? Because they don't expect anybody to actually really, or they don't expect a lot of people or majority of people to do these things, to read this. I am 98.8% sure that the majority of sellers who have already given Plaid their banking information or verified their accounts via Etsy did not read any of this, didn't click on any of those links. The end user privacy policy, Etsy's privacy policy, none of this. And it's very troubling. So looking through this, so our data practices. This section describes Plaid's data practices relating to our processing of information about you. We also provide summaries of practices organized by category of information collected and by product at the end of this policy in the summaries of processing activities section. Now, if you click on that link, you'll see how long this thing is. But let's just look at some of the highlights. Information we collect in categories of sources, So identifiers. For example, name, email address, phone number, and username. Why are you collecting all of that? You're supposed to verify my bank account and make sure I'm not money laundering. Location, time zone setting, device location, financial institution, financial information. For example, financial account name and number, balance, and transaction history. Why do you need my bank balance and my transaction history when you're just verifying my bank account? Does that help with money laundering detection? Perhaps. I don't know. I'm just asking questions. Commercial information. For example, data relating to which of our services you use through developer apps and the dates and times of your use. That seems like that's for marketing purposes. It's just my opinion. Now, some of these things could be necessary and they just happen to be useful in other ways. For example, hey, this person also uses our other apps and what time of day they use them. So maybe then that information can be used to market to that person during those high peak hours of use. It could be data that is necessary that just so happen can be used for other reasons. Now, seeing Plaid's past and their shady business practices, I'm going to call it shady because it does seem very shady for them to have to pay $58 million. So a judge also thought their behavior was rather shady. So nothing really alleged going on there, but this company Etsy's asking us to trust a company with that past who has been told to pay $58 million, $13.50 for every customer who was affected by them. We're told to just trust them when they haven't earned that trust back, when there's actually a reason not to trust them, when there's actually a reason to be very uncomfortable with this. So it's very, very odd. And it's very upsetting that Etsy has chosen this company, this third-party entity, which is probably a very big third-party entity, which is why Visa wanted to acquire them. But it's very troubling. And there's good reason for why sellers are very nervous about this. Professional information, for example, information about your employer and payroll information. Why on earth would Plaid ever need that information regarding to just verify an Etsy seller's bank account and that they're not committing money laundering or fraud? That's odd. And I don't know if people know that. Electronic network activity information, that's the one I skipped. For example, your device hardware model and operating system and browser data. Now, why on earth would Plaid need to collect that information on what the device I'm using? Is it a laptop? Is it a cell phone? Is it an iPad? What model is it? Is it a Samsung? Is it Apple? What operating system? And browser data. Why would they need to collect all of that? What are they doing with that information? And here we have inferences that we have derived from the information we've collected. For example, we may derive location from IP address or your annual income from your pay stubs. Again, you are giving this third-party entity your banking account number, routing number, and potentially password, and they're collecting or inferring information, which is your annual income, from pay stubs. This is very troubling. Why would they need to collect this? And I'm sure there's some minuscule reason why they would need this information, but it's still extremely troubling. And that's why I said it's important for people to read things like this, because you're completely unaware. This is free data for them. Etsy sellers and end users completely unaware they have this information, and that's money for companies that are out there. I'm not going to say it's money for companies like Plaid, but it's access to data for companies like Plaid. But it's money for companies that are out there, legitimate and illegitimate companies, I will call them. And for a third-party company like Plaid with a troubling past, who was just told to pay $58 million for harvesting and potentially selling exactly this type of data, it's extremely, I'm trying to say this politely, it's extremely uncomfortable that Etsy is now forcing its sellers to use this company to provide them with our data that they were just kind of caught harvesting and potentially selling. Now, instead of just doing it secretly, they're just doing it openly, because our information is money. And yes, we can be blissfully unaware, making our crafts, selling our crafts for the holidays. Meanwhile, our information is being harvested behind the scenes, and we're completely unaware. So that's why a lot of sellers are up in arms about this whole Plaid Etsy situation. Let's read on. Information you provide. When you connect your financial accounts with a developer application or otherwise connect your financial accounts through Plaid, which is what Etsy is asking us to do, where applicable, we collect identifiers and login information required by the provider of your account, such as your username and password or a security token. In some cases, we also collect your social security number, date of birth, phone number, email address, security questions and answers, and one-time password to help verify your identity and connect your financial accounts. When providing this information, you give the developer and Plaid the authority to act on your behalf to access and transmit your end user information from the relevant bank or other entity that provides your financial accounts. We'll call them financial product and service providers in this policy. You may also provide us with identifiers and other information, including your name, email address, and phone number when you are contacting us, when you contact us or enter any such information on our websites. That is very disturbing. That does not look or seem okay in any form or fashion. I can't imagine Etsy sellers being okay with any of that. But basically, Plaid is collecting, in my opinion, Again, all of this, in my opinion, not a lawyer, nothing of that kind. But any contact you have with Plaid, they're collecting on you. They're collecting on you at all times. Anytime you reach out to them, you call them, they're collecting. You visit their website, they're collecting. And the fact that they have all of your personal identifiable information is being collected at all points in time is extremely disturbing. That paragraph is not okay with me. It doesn't sit well, it doesn't read well, and it doesn't look okay. And the fact that they just got hit with a $58 million settlement, also not okay. So I don't know if Etsy sellers are aware. I don't know how that paragraph impacts them or not. If Plaid has access to that information through this verification process, and Plaid's just putting out there just in case. But from what I've read with this end user privacy policy, if they have access to it, they will collect it, it seems, in my opinion. And I don't know how long they keep it. Maybe it says later on in this very long, it also goes into French. So it may be in multiple languages here, but I think I only saw like 3. But it's this is not okay. This is very disturbing. Again, all of this is based on trust. You're trusting that this company will comply with all of these things. Again, data is money. That is a lot of money, and you're trusting that this company is not going to sell your data for that money when companies are in the business of making money. So this is very troubling. But this is what Etsy wants you to give your information to, your financial information to. So I don't know what the options are if you want to continue to sell on Etsy. Again, I only have 6 days before I figure out my solution, whether or not it's, sorry for the scrolling, whether or not it's to stop selling on Etsy and find another company. Again, eBay is an option, but that has taken an unfortunate turn for the worse when it comes to seller interactions. Etsy looks like it's going right down that same path of taking an unfortunate turn and not offering sellers a third option outside of Plaid to verify themselves, especially for sellers who have been selling on Etsy on Etsy for many years, or just continuing to just do in-person sales with events that happen locally or traveling conventions. But this is, or creating my own website. But this is very unfortunate. I hope that sellers do take the time out to at least read up on some of these things so that they know what they're actually what information they're turning over to this company. And it's an unfortunate time that Etsy has chosen to do this. Again, same year that Plaid was just told to pay $58 million in a privacy class action settlement. And then also the deadline being right before the holidays, which is extremely sketch. So that's not very user friendly. This company doesn't seem very user friendly. That will collect any and all data it potentially can on sellers. And I just know that there are so many sellers out there who are just, I got to get my money. We're coming off a 2-year pandemic. And it's the holidays coming up, and they're just not really thinking this through all the way. And I'm hoping that they're not interacting with Plaid to the point where Plaid is collecting all of that data that we just read in their privacy policy, that they're collecting social security numbers and more information than necessary to verify or to satisfy whatever the requirements are for Etsy. It's very troubling that Etsy's doing this to sellers at this point in time versus January, February timeframe. Even the payment hold is not ideal for some sellers, and that is just it's all very uncomfortable and unfortunate. So that's what I'm going to leave it on. This is all very uncomfortable and unfortunate, and I hope the best for all the sellers out there. And keep an eye on your banking on your bank accounts. Keep an eye on your information. Keep an eye on um, your credit. Again, you get 3 annual reports that you can pull from. You pull one maybe every quarter of the year to keep an eye on it, and hopefully um, no other settlements. Well, I'm not going to say settlements if Plaid does do wrong, and hopefully more settlements will pop up if they are doing wrong. But hopefully Plaid may have seen the error of the ways. Let's hope for the best for that. But we're going to be cautious moving forward. And I stress to sellers to keep an eye on their finances as they're trying to move in and rush for the holidays that are coming up, to take some time out for themselves and keep an eye out for their own information. I hope this helps somebody somewhere.